What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Star Wars Rebels Season 4. And yeah, this season gave me a lot more what I was wanting to see from the show, a lot more risks, a lot more darker elements. And honestly, it gave me a storyline that I didn't think about until it started to occur to me what this whole season was going to be about. And I realized that this was a good wrapping up point. I'm guessing that they knew this was going to be their last season, more than likely, going into it, because it really does feel like they set this up to be almost like a bookend for a lot of what this show was setting up in the beginning. So, first of all, love the beginning of the season. You know, the first two episodes on Mandalore, because right away you start off with something a lot darker. You know, this weapon that Sabine created that essentially attacks the Mandalorian armor. Right off the bat, I mean that's already a darker element. It's something that is a lot more gritty and a lot more based in what I wanted to see out of the show, which is tackling this idea of a rebellion trying to rise up against a stronger power and how that can really affect you and the cost that it can take. Granted, I will say I was a little worried because after the first episode, immediately in the second one, you have that moment of, oh my gosh, Sabine's mom and brother are just gone. Like, they just got vaporized. And then the second episode immediately starts, and like, hey, we got out of the way in time. And I'm just like, oh no. Are we not going to have any sacrifices? Are we not going to? But we did. You know, we did have several moments that were a lot heavier, that definitely took some chances. Not many, honestly, not any other moments outside of that one where they made it seem like a character was dead and then brought him back. Outside of Melch, but that was more done for comedy's sake, not so much of a fake out death. So yeah, I mean, all in all, that it was a good start to the season, and then you go right into Lothal, and right away, they start building up this whole we got to go get this TIE Defender factory, and after the first the first two-parter that was there on Lothal, I started to realize, okay, so this is what the season is going to be about. It's about taking Lothal back from the Empire. And again, it makes sense. Because even though there was no real one main character, it was about the team of the Phantom, it still kind of started with Ezra. You know, it was his story at the beginning and it's his story at the end. Him taking back his hometown from the Empire. And, how it affects him along the way. Obviously, if you haven't watched the show, then spoilers, because I am talking about some more major plot points here. But yeah, losing his mentor. I had wondered, because that episode where Kanan does die, there was definitely a lot of clues leading toward that, and some of that just comes from I've watched so many shows and I've played so many games and seen so many movies. You kind of start to pick up whenever they're setting up for something to happen, and yeah, there's a lot of red flags or death flags raised toward Kanan at the beginning of the episode where he dies. Him cutting his hair, him telling Ezra, hey, be prepared for what comes after this. Hera finally telling him that she loved him. Like, there are so many moments I'm just like, I feel like Kanan might not make it out of this okay. But again, it took that risk and it gave that moment to Ezra, and we got to see how he dealt with it. And honestly, I liked how the whole team dealt with it, because we got to see a few different reactions that all felt in line with their characters. From Ezra's point of view, he lost his mentor. And so there's kind of a mixture of grief and feeling like he was partially responsible, like he's not good enough, but also fear of, well, now that my mentor is gone, what am I going to do? What is my purpose here? And am I going to be able to complete it, because am I ready for it? So I like that. Hera, obviously, a lot of grief because she loved him. That feeling of losing somebody that you love deeply, it's not something that can be explained. And obviously, it's not something I've had to deal with, fortunately. But I know from hearing stories, from hearing people talk about it, it's just that feeling that you've lost a part of yourself with them. Whenever it's somebody that's you're that connected with. But also, because she was partially responsible for the decisions made, there was that feeling too of, was it her fault? So yeah, I really liked what they did with it and how they handled everybody's reactions. Obviously, Sabine and Zeb had their own reaction, which was essentially, to go try to get back at the Empire right away, and that just fits right within because they're both a little bit of a wild card. But yeah, it was a really well done episode following Kanan's death, and I feel like it really gave the team a chance to breathe and grieve for a moment before getting right back into the plot and getting to that kind of the final build up for the season, which I was not really sure. I knew obviously the rescue of Lothal was kind of going to be one big point of it, but we also got a few other things. The Loth Wolves showing up was something that gave a bit of mystery throughout the season. But getting to see a little bit more of them, seeing how in tune they seem to be with the Force and with the planet. I don't really. There were certain things that didn't really get explained with them, and I don't know if we're just supposed to assume certain things about them or maybe I just missed something. But the fact that the one wolf kept saying Doom, which was Kanan's real last name. I was wondering if there was going to be some connection there, and even that one big wolf, it seemed to be Kanan communicating through the wolf to Ezra, but I was wondering if maybe he had some connection, like maybe an ancestor that was there or something along those lines, because he even talked to Hera at one point in the season, basically saying it feels like we were drawn here for a reason. So I wondered if maybe there was something about his past or his ancestry that was connected to Lothal and maybe the Loth Wolves as well. But we didn't really get any answers that I could tell from that. Also, there was the Grand Inquisitor, because I'm pretty sure that painting that was inside the temple, the one guy looked a lot like him, because it was like the father, the daughter, and the son looked a lot like the Grand Inquisitor. So I didn't really recognize the father or the daughter. I don't know if I was supposed to, so if you're watching this and you have those answers, please let me know. But there were some questions around him as well, because we saw he used to be a Jedi Knight, and I thought we were going to get more about him after the second that scene in the second season. But ultimately, we didn't really get anything else with him. And then all of a sudden, a picture that looks a lot like him, at least from what I could tell, shows up in the temple, and I'm like, okay, so what does that tell me? There are some other unanswered questions as well, but it felt more like they were building up for future stuff, which, from what I understand, the show Ahsoka is going to tackle some of those questions, like where did Ezra and Thrawn go at the end of the season. It seems like Ahsoka is going to be searching for them in that show, which is going to be interesting because from what I read, it sounds like it's going to be, the what's his name, Dave Filoni, I think. He said at one point to, what's her name? Oh God, I'm gonna hate myself. Whoever is playing the live action Ahsoka, she was also in like the Netflix Marvel shows. Damn it, I'm pissed. I don't remember her name, but she did at some point say, I read an interview because I was looking up to see what Ahsoka was going to be about, if that was going to connect to Rebels at all, and it sounds like Dave Filoni, who wrote for Clone Wars and for Rebels, sounds like he's even said that this is supposed to be almost season 5 of Rebels. So sort of wrapping up where did Ezra and Thrawn go at the end of the season after all the events of the original Star Wars movies happened. So it'll be interesting to see, live action Ahsoka. We'll get to see a live action Ezra and Thrawn, possibly even a live action Sabine as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that for sure. But other unanswered questions, I feel like were more so just kind of nitpicky here or there. Like there were certain things about the Inquisitors that I feel like we didn't really tackle as much. The whole thing with the place that Ezra goes to definitely felt like something they were building up for possibly future stuff, because the idea of time travel in Star Wars is not something that I've seen from what I've witnessed. But clearly we see here that he was able to go back and save Ahsoka from Vader, which we'd already seen a scene with her at the end of season 2, I believe, where she was walking down a tunnel as the place was crumbling around her. So we knew she had survived, but to see how exactly she survived, to see that Ezra had apparently pulled her away from Vader about to kill her was kind of interesting because I like the idea whenever time travel is done. My personal favorite thing is that the time travel that happened already. So like Harry Potter logic. Whatever stuff that you saw earlier on, there are certain things that you saw earlier in the movie, and it's like, oh, okay, that was kind of weird. What was that weird noise behind him? And then you go back through, and you're like, oh, that's when this happened, and that's when that happened. So to see Ezra went back, and he's apparently the one that saved Ahsoka before the whole place came crashing down, it kind of lends itself to the idea that that always happened, like from the beginning, as Ezra saved her before Vader could finish her off. So I guess it does sort of raise the question of what did Ahsoka do after that? Like when she shows up to Sabine at the end, she's clearly wearing some sort of robes that I don't know where she got them. I don't know what they represent. But yeah, this whole place though, it seems like Palpatine also knew about it because he found both of them there and tried to either kill or take both of them. And I don't know if possibly he's looking for a way to get in there. And if he is, what is he hoping to accomplish? Is he hoping to go back and change his destiny, change what happens to him in the end because he knows what happens? There's a lot of questions that got raised there that I feel like need to be explored in future stuff because it's an interesting concept. The idea of time travel typically is pretty interesting. But how is Star Wars going to handle it? Has it been handled since then? I don't know. And obviously, don't spoil me if it has been talked about in future stuff that I haven't gotten to yet. But it's something that kind of gets me excited looking ahead. Thrawn obviously sticks around at the end. He's still, I'm pretty sure he's still alive. I'm pretty sure he's been cast in the live action Ahsoka show. So clearly he and Ezra survived the hyperspace jump. And honestly, it gets me excited because, again, seeing him throughout this final season was so good. So many moments where you can sense that he is very aware of how really resilient, the Phantom Squadron is, like how good they are at getting out of tough situations, how exceptional a lot of them are. There was the moment whenever, because they had stolen one of the new TIE fighters, the Defenders. Ezra and Sabine were in one, and just seeing him sort of calculating everything happening, he's like, I'm wondering who is flying that, and then they disable whatever they were supposed to disable. And he's like, it must be the Mandalorian. She's the only one who has enough talent to do that. And then Ezra takes out the final fighter, and he's like, yes. If a pilot like Ezra Bridger is able to take out 3 of our best pilots in that thing, that means this is very good. This is a very good design. And just seeing him calculating all of that, seeing how much he appreciates, like he had multiple instances of appreciating Hera's abilities. I don't know, something about your enemy knowing how talented you are, not thinking that you're worthless, because most of the time, you get those villains that are almost kind of comical, because they're like, we're so much better than you, we outnumber you, you're worthless, and it almost feels like you're just setting them up, pride before the fall. But Thrawn, he has a lot of pride. He does think that he is better than them, but it's not that he thinks they are bad. It's not that he thinks that they're unable to win. It's he reads them. He knows what they're capable of, and he knows how to counteract those capabilities. Even to the point where when Hera's flying up against one of the Defenders, the pilot on the Defender flying right at the whole Star Destroyer, basically he even sees, oh yes, you need to pull back right now. The guy doesn't listen to him. He's like, well, unfortunately that means this guy's signed his own death, so yep, shoot at him. And I don't know, just something really fun about that and that type of villain. And honestly, the only way they were able to win any of their encounters against him were moments where it's the stuff he doesn't know about. And he even says at one point he doesn't quite understand the Force, and that is something that he can't account for. He couldn't account for Bendu at the end of last season. He couldn't account for all the wolves and stuff that happened here. the ability to bring in all of the flying whale type things. I've already forgotten the name of them. I think it starts with a P, but I don't remember what they're called now. But he can't account for that stuff, and that's where the team is able to find a way to beat him. And that's kind of interesting, if you don't have Kanan and Ezra on your team, are you able to beat him? Probably not, because he is so strategically placed. And also he talks about the benefits of being a more strategic minded person as compared to a more morally minded person, and how strategy often wins over morality. And that is true. We even see with Saul Guerrera, I think that was this season where they had a couple episodes with him. I think. Or was that last season? I don't remember now. Yeah, that was this season, because there was the one where they went to the satellite dish and then they tried to blow it up, and then Saw Gerrera came and blew it up. Pretty sure that was this season. But seeing how he gets results, he gets the job done, but at the same time, it's almost like he's sacrificing his morality to do so. And a lot of what the rebels are fighting for is against that sort of mindset. They want to fight the Empire without becoming evil like the Empire. And a lot of what Saw does is a bit more evil. It feels a little bit more on the side of, this is what the Empire is willing to do, but we're not sure we want you to do that. But again, that's one of the interesting balancing effects. Can you fight without sacrificing your morality? And if you are able to fight without sacrificing your morality, but your opponent is willing to sacrifice that, is that going to cost you in the end? And most of the time in battle, at least, for a lot of what we saw, it does feel like that is true. A lot of what Thrawn says is true, but then you've got the Force to account for, and that's where things can change for the better. But all in all, though, it was a very good final season, a lot of really good moments to it. It really set up for what was an exciting finale, and a very emotional finale, too. I feel like they did a good job of building Ezra up to this point. Even with Kanan sacrificing himself at that one point, he gets the chance to save Kanan, and he doesn't take it because he realizes he needs to let go. And that even more so compounds whenever Palpatine basically gives him a chance to go see his family again, and he decides not to take that chance because it's not what he wants. He realizes he has to let them go. And I feel like that's where this whole time travel thing, it's going to get interesting, because clearly the Jedi and the light side of the Force, they're not going to use this whole time travel place. They're not going to use that, because essentially part of being one with the Force is being able to let go and being able to essentially push down and not give in to the pain of the past. Use that pain to almost better yourself in the process. Whereas the dark side of the Force, clearly they're all about trying to almost rewrite the laws of nature to get rid of the pain. They use the pain for the power, but then they try to use that power to reverse the pain. And it's a really weird concept to think of, but if you think about a lot of what the Sith try to do, even what Palpatine did to Anakin in the prequels, a lot of that was them trying to use the power of the dark side to essentially overcome death. And in doing so, you use that pain, and then you don't have to feel the pain of death. And it's a very weird, kind of backwards way of thinking. But a place like this, where you can almost rewrite the laws of time, and you can go back and change something that happened to essentially win the day, it's something that I feel like the dark side of the Force would be very drawn to. So I do wonder, again, I don't know if it's going to come back later. I really think it should, because it would be interesting to see how somebody like Palpatine, or anybody, any Sith, anybody on the dark side of the Force, how could they use a place like this to rewrite their own history and essentially get rid of whatever pain they had in the past. I feel like it's going to be a fun concept, and I hope they explore it more elsewhere. Outside of that, I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm forgetting. Story-wise, a lot of it was pretty straightforward. Again, mainly because I've seen a lot of stuff, and this is kind of written for kids. A lot of what I was seeing, I was able to kind of predict where it was going. Again, with Kanan's sacrifice, kind of saw that coming with the one governor guy, Ryder, with him turning them in, but it's all a trap to lure in Governor Price. Like, that's all kind of straightforward. You kind of see it coming if you know what to expect. The one assassin guy, Rook, I think, even with him coming back and letting Thrawn know what's going on and getting Thrawn there quicker, even that, I'm kind of like, yeah, but I feel like more than likely Ezra planned for that, because you even have the one kid basically saying, yeah, Ezra gave me a secret mission. So you kind of feel like Ezra already knew that this was a possibility. And he even said at one point that he saw so many paths ahead of him and he decided to take this one. So it's almost like he saw the future a bit and he saw what could possibly happen, what possible outcomes there were, and he found the one that I'm guessing saved the most lives, and benefited them the most and saved Lothal in the process. So with that in mind, it does feel like a lot of this he already knew was going to happen. He already knew about Rook coming back and warning Thrawn coming in, basically bombing the city, turning himself over, and Palpatine trying to tempt him with his parents. I feel like he already saw a lot of that happening and knew what his choices had to be, even to the end where he essentially sacrificed himself to get Thrawn far away, because clearly Thrawn's too much of a threat to have in the war. Because if somebody like him was constantly involved in the Empire, I feel like the Empire probably would have, I don't know if they would have won the war in the end, but they probably would have not lost as quickly as they did in some of the battles. Because I feel like if he had had a chance to really study the rebels and figure out, what their plans were, even like with the Death Star, I'm sure he probably would have seen, oh, look at this giant weakness that we have right here. Why don't we fix that? So I'm sure Ezra saw that getting Thrawn away from the Empire was the best choice. So in the end, it was a little predictable, but it felt very well written. And for a kid's show especially, I feel like they did a good job of really bringing home the emotion in a lot of those scenes. The final wrap-up stuff, it was all pretty straightforward. I liked a lot of what they did. Callus getting to see the, what are they called? The Lasat's home world. I thought that was a nice little bookend for him after the emotional episode that he and Zeb had on the ice planet, or the ice moon. Sabine, getting to see her after all the aftermath was kind of fun. Finding out Hera and Hera and Kanan had a kid. When? I know, again, kids show, so you're not going to show that scene. But when? Because she admitted she loved him right before he died. When? So yeah, that was kind of a funny little. As soon as they showed the kid, I'm just like, I don't know if that's possible. But no, a lot of the wrap up was fine. Got to see a lot. Hondo as well for the final two episodes he's just a fun character to have. So having him be involved was a nice moment. And again, he had some really funny scenes. So I really hope we get to see more of him in the future, because I know he was typically, like, he was in Clone Wars and he was in Rebels quite a few times. I don't know if there's been a live action version of him yet, but if not, I hope we get one, because he's freaking hysterical. But yeah, all in all, looking at the show as a whole, it was short, but it was sweet. It did its job. It was effective. It got me invested. And honestly, I compare this to Clone Wars. Clone Wars overall was definitely the better show, but it also had a lot more time to really tell its story, and a lot more time to build up characters and get through a lot of filler, but get to the point at the end of it all. Rebels, because it was shorter, they didn't have as many episodes to kind of spend on goofy little side missions. Every mission, it felt like it had a point. It felt like it had to grow a character somehow. The only two or three that I can think of is just any mission that involved the droids. And granted, I love Chopper. I think he's probably my favorite droid right now, just because of how sadistic he could be. But even so, it still felt like those missions were the only ones that weren't really as important to the story, because it felt more like we were just little fun side missions with the sadistic little droid and then his eventual friend, AP5 that came along that kind of counterbalanced him. Which, now that I think about it, I don't think we saw AP5 at all this season, did we? Maybe that's why I enjoyed the season so much. But no, I mean, every episode though, even the little side missions, it felt like you were getting some character growth out of these guys. And I feel like that's something that Clone Wars was not able to do, because those filler episodes felt more kind of pointless. You had to have all these characters that were involved in the Clone Wars. And so, your Jar Jar episodes or your C3PO and R2D2 episodes, those episodes are the ones that you're just kind of like, okay, so we know they existed in this world. Let's see what they're doing. Let's see what they're up to. And that kind of felt more like the episodes for the kids that want to see those characters. So I feel like that's what Rebels holds over Clone Wars. And I feel like that really allowed for these characters to shine and get their moments, because it was a smaller cast. It was a team of 5, 6 if you count Chopper, right? Yeah. So it's a smaller team, which means you really get to focus in on the characters a lot more, as compared to when you got Obi-Wan, Anakin, Ahsoka, Leia, Jar Jar, C3PO, R2D2, Mace Windu, Yoda, basically the entire Jedi Council. You got the clones, all of those characters. It felt like you had to spend a lot of time developing them and developing their stories and showing what they're up to. So I appreciated Rebels for that, and really keeping it condensed, even when they did add some characters on, like when they added Rex to the team, when Callus became involved as well. It still felt like it was very condensed, and it felt like they did a good job of streamlining it and not spending too much time away from what we want to see, which is the main team working together, managing to stay ahead of the Empire and trying to fight to live another day. And yeah, for what it was, it gave me a lot of fun and a lot of moments that I will remember. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Looking forward to seeing what Star Wars holds next. I don't know if I'm going to jump right into another Star Wars show, because I think Mandalorian Season 1 is my next stop. And I know obviously people have raved about it, and anybody who knows that I haven't seen Mandalorian but I like Star Wars, they're always like, I can't believe you've not seen it. But I think I am going to take a little bit of a break from Star Wars before jumping back into it. Not decided where I'm going to jump into next, because I still have some FX shows to get to, like Fargo and Legion. I've also got all the CW shows still, which could be fun to rage at those shows and how badly they're written, maybe. But also it's going to be a big time suck, because I've got 3 shows to watch at once. And then, of course, there's also... Or no, wait, 4 shows now. Damn it. And then there's also, The Blacklist still, The Walking Dead still. I'm going to try to watch at some point, and I know people may not even be watching this part of the video, but Justified was a show that I really, really liked when it was on. I'm currently, in my spare time, whenever I'm not watching shows for reviews, I'm currently binge watching that show just to remember what it is, because I know Justified, Primeval City, I think is what it's called, just got released. That is one that I probably will do reviews on, because hey, I love the fact that they're going back to that show, because man, that show is so good. I was thinking about possibly doing reviews for Justified, but I don't know. I kind of just want to watch and enjoy on my own time and not have to worry about setting up for doing a review and all that. But yeah, long story short, look forward to seeing what I've got next. If you enjoyed this review, please leave a like and subscribe. I really do appreciate anybody who's watched at this point in the video, and if you are watching my videos, thank you so much. Your reviews are greatly appreciated. But if you want to see more Star Wars stuff, stay tuned. I will be getting to it. And until then, peace out.